Ooh, comics. Ooh, Blink comics. Everybody, welcome back. Haussmann17 here, and today I get to talk about one of my favorite characters of all time, Blink. Blink actually debuted in Uncanny X-Men number 317 in 1994. She was created by Scott Lobdell and Joey Mads, I'm going to call him. And it was during the whole Phalanx thing, and she actually debuted in an issue and then died in that same issue. And that was a shame, because Blink was awesome. And I think deep down they knew that. A year later, in the Age of Apocalypse, which is like probably my favorite story of all time, it's, I think, what really got me into comics in the first place. So in the Age of Apocalypse, Scott Lobdell and Joey Mads brought her back. And the world stood up and said,
"Hello, Clarice."
Her name is Clarice Ferguson, and in the Age of Apocalypse, she's a vastly different character. She was rescued from these pens as a child by Sabretooth, and she was kind of raised in the X-Men by Sabretooth, who was a good guy. So she's a much tougher character. She had a much larger role in the Age of Apocalypse than she did in the main 616 comics. She is back now, but she died, like in her very first issue, and stayed dead for quite some time, leaving the legacy of this Age of Apocalypse character to just went on to become a fan favorite. But there wasn't a lot of opportunities to tell stories in the Age of Apocalypse because it itself had wrapped up and ended. So when in 2001 they announced they were doing a Blink miniseries, I was 100% on board and not ready for what came next, because this ultimately led into the Exiles, which is one of my favorite comics of all time. And it also gave us a story where Blink ends up hooking up with an Nihilist. So we're going to look into that today. Before we head back to the Age of Apocalypse, I would really appreciate if you would hit the like button and subscribe, and just do all that kind of stuff. Like if you comment below, if you share this video, more importantly, like I'd love to grow as a channel, and I need you guys to help me do that. Blink, number 1, came out in 2001. It was written by Scott Lobdell, who originally created Blink, with art by Trevor McCarthy. The art is actually really good. It's decent. It's kind of goes up and down over the course of the 4 issues, but it's still way better than anything I could do. Just a tad cartoony for my taste, but still, it's Blink. It's the Age of Apocalypse. What more do we need? The first issue, they jump right into the action. They're in Dallas, Texas, and it's Blink, Rogue, and Morph, and they are fighting all these guys. And it kind of shows how Blink's a little unreliable with the team, and Rogue is giving orders, and she turns around, and Blink is gone, because Blink went off to kind of try to solve everything herself, and she found something deep down below, something that Dark Beast was actually working on, and Dark Beast shows up and talks to her through a camera. Like it's really awesome to see all these characters again, you know, after the Age of Apocalypse ended and they all ceased to exist, well, except for Dark Beast, but that's something else. And she finds who he's experimenting on is actually the Impossible Man. Obviously, the Impossible Man did not show up in the Age of Apocalypse. Dark Beast is using his genetic material to make all these soldiers for Apocalypse, and they're really hard to fight. And there's a really cool scene where Impossible Man's like, "Kill me." And Dark Beast is like, "Blink, you're not going to do that. You're an X-Man. You're a good guy." And she's like, "I'm an X-Man that was trained and raised by Sabretooth." She kills Impossible Man, and that's that. And then a little bit later, she's getting reprimanded by Magneto. Magneto's like, "I'm the leader of the X-Men, and you aren't following orders. Like, I don't know if this is working out." And she's like, "You know what? Whatever. I am a rebellious teenager. I don't need the X-Men." And she goes off on her own. While off on her own, she comes across Holocaust, who is Apocalypse's son in the Age of Apocalypse, and he is fighting these big dudes, and it turns out to be Blastar from the Negative Zone. There's a lot of Fantastic Four stuff in this one. And Blastar's like,
"I'm trying to take over the Earth, but you're in my way."
You know, as Blastar is known to do. And Holocaust is like, "Well, get out of here." Beats him up, and they go back, and Blink's starting to think, like, holy crap, like, these guys are fighting against Apocalypse. I gotta get their help. And she ends up going and jumping through the portal as they're retreating to try and recruit them and get their help. And then she winds up in the Negative Zone with amnesia. Issue 2 starts with Blink in the Negative Zone staring down the barrel of a gun held by Amore. I call him Amore. It's spelled Amore, so I'm probably gonna go back and forth, but I think I just by default call him Amore. Anyway, Amore is this guy, and they have a fight, and it kind of goes back and forth, and it's like, oh, they're fighting each other, but it's also playful. It's kind of a meet cute.
Stop hitting me.
Okay.
It's like, oh, what's going to happen here? There's obviously an attraction between the two of them. And then the ground starts shooting up with lava and everything because it's unstable, and they kind of save each other and get out of there, and he explains the situation and what's going on. He's like, "Hey, I'm Amore, and I'm kind of like a freedom fighter here in the Negative Zone because Blastar's a dick, and he's running things, and I'm kind of like part of this underground resistance to get our rightful ruler back. I don't know much about him, but he's this guy, a nihilist." These dudes came in and they kind of overthrew him, and then they just left. And he's talking about the Fantastic Four, like they even show a panel of it. He's like, so the Fantastic Four came and they took out a nihilist and they left, and then Blastar took over. And I mean, Annihilus sucked, but Blastar really sucks. So I'm part of this underground resistance to get Blastar out of there and get Annihilus back in. And Blink's like, okay, well, I have no memories, so you know what? That's awesome. I'm going to help you. And she does. Blink joins the resistance, and she joins Amore. Issue 3 picks up months later. Now, honestly, issue 2 and issue 3 are kind of just filler. Scott Lobdell had still given the plot, but Judd Winnick has taken over the writing, and I think that was the plan all along, which I'll circle back and come to that later. But yeah, so issue 3 picks up months later. Blink and Amore are like kind of running this resistance, and they're doing really good. They're knocking Blastar's guys around, and they are in a loving relationship. And it's like, my love, ooh, and whatnot. The first issue is the best issue of this because it has the Age of Apocalypse stuff. The rest is kind of filler. It does do a lot for Blink's character, but I mean, it's 6 years after the Age of Apocalypse, so I mean, we'll get to it. They're trying to restore Annihilus to the throne of the negative zone. That rhymed. But like, we still haven't seen Annihilus. Anyway, Blastar captures Blink and Amore, and they're thrown in prison, and Blastar's like,
Blink, you don't really understand what's happening here, do you, girl?
She's like, what? And he's like,
That guy, you're with Amore like you don't understand. He is a monster.
she's like, no, he's sweet. I like love him or whatever. And Blastar's like,
He's Annihilus. Like, he's a monster. He is Annihilus.
what does he say? He straight up says,
Have you not heard of Annihilus? He really hasn't told you, has he? Well, deception is his life's blood. For your dearest Amore is the demon Annihilus.
and Amore's like, no, that is a lie. And Blink's like, oh God, no, please, no. When the fourth issue opens up, Blink and Amore are in prison, and Amore's like pleading with Blink. He's like, please, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm not Annihilus. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. I am a new man. I guess I don't know who I am, but I know that I love you, and you've made me a good person. Like, please. And Blink's like, no. Well, she doesn't actually say anything. She doesn't talk to him. She won't even acknowledge him. Even as he's dragged off to be beaten by Blastar's men, she doesn't even look at him. And I think, like, well, that's kind of weird. She just blindly takes Blastar's word for it. Like, she's been with Amore all these months fighting alongside of him to defeat Blastar. Blastar's the bad guy. And then she just takes Blastar's word for something instantly. But I mean, it is true. Like, he is Annihilus. Apparently when the Fantastic Four beat him, he regressed evolutionarily and became this human dude. He's not unattractive. Like, he doesn't look anything like Annihilus at the moment. Yeah, and then Blastar comes down and he's like,
Yeah. You suck. Your heart's broken. How's that feel?
and she's like, whatever, man, I don't care. And he's like,
Guess what? He was telling the truth. He doesn't know he's Annihilus. Like, he probably loves you. He is a different person.
and Blink's like, what? So he was telling the truth? Oh, man. Fudge. Brownies. She goes out and saves him and defeats Blastar somewhat. And there's this big annihilation cannon that is going to destroy the Earth. And Blink's like, well, I do live there. Her memories have come back at some point. And she goes and, like, Annihilus is hooked up to the cannon, and there's nothing that can be done. If you take Annihilus off the cannon, it will destroy everything. And she's like, I can do this. I can teleport us out of here. I can blow up Blastar's backyard. Like, the good guys win. And Amore, who's more Annihilus now, is like, no, don't you understand? There are no good guys. There's Blastar, and there's Annihilus, and some girl trying to cheat death. There are no good guys. It's kind of awesome. And he's like, no, just go home, get out of the negative zone. I am not the man you loved. Blink, obviously, she's the hero. Like, she has a hard time believing this. She kisses his bug-ass face. And he's like, just leave and forget me. And she's like, no, I will never forget you. Never, ever. Despite never mentioning it again. Ever. But she didn't forget him. I'm sure it was in the back of her mind. And she teleports everybody out of there, or herself. And she teleports him out. And then the whole thing blows up Blastar's backyard. And Annihilus is fully reformed. And he takes back over the negative zone. And then he's like, Clarice. So he's like full bug monster, and he's still like Clarice. So he remembers, even though he never mentions it again, and then goes off and, annihilates space. Now there is debate. People, I don't know, it shouldn't be much of a debate. People say this is the negative zone from the Age of Apocalypse, not our negative zone. I feel like there is only one negative zone, and also the Age of Apocalypse didn't start out as an alternate reality. It started out as the 616 Earth with a different trajectory, so that would mean it is the same negative zone. But even if it is a different negative zone, like Amore straight up references the Fantastic Four came, and in the Age of Apocalypse there was no Fantastic Four. They existed, but they were humans. So how could if it was this, you know what I mean? I believe that is straight up the Blastar and the Annihilus from the main 616 continuity. They might not be, I guess, but I mean, to me they are. Blink goes off back to the Age of Apocalypse, and then the Age of Apocalypse happens. And then this does give a little teaser at the end. She gets plunked out of reality and plopped down, and she meets Nocturne, and that is the start of the Exiles, which I believe is why Judd Winnick was brought on to write this, because Judd Winnick did write the Exiles book at the start. Blink is just an amazing character. I think she's really great. I think it was great that she got this little mini-series. It's weird. It doesn't really fit into the Age of Apocalypse. It's got some Age of Apocalypse stuff in it. And it does lead into Exiles. And had I not read this, I wouldn't have read Exiles, which I ended up loving so much. And had I not loved the Age of Apocalypse and Blink, I wouldn't have read this. Is this my favorite story? No, not by any means. Is it a good story? Not really. Do I get to pop up once in a while and be like, hey, Blink had sex with Annihilus? Yes. And that's a fun fact. That's just fun. Blink had a loving relationship with a de-evolved version of Annihilus. That is weird. That's the kind of stuff you only get in comics. Next time you're out there and you see the girl you like and she is just with some ugly guy that treats her like crap, just remember that Blink had a relationship with Annihilus. So, I mean, stuff happens. Anyway, that's been me talking about Blink. I love Blink. I love the Age of Apocalypse. And I like Exiles. And I'm going to get to Exiles one day because I really want to just go through that whole thing and stuff. And now I'm rambling. Anyway, please, like I said, like this video, subscribe, comment, share, I guess hit the bell thing. That's something people need to do on YouTube. Just thank you guys very much.